Hi, and welcome to the Work Smarter, Not Harder Rewind podcast. I am Brittany Alligood.
And I'm Scott Holcomb.
And we are part of the Data Research and Accountability team here at Wake County Public Schools. And so as the newest members of our team, we are here to bring in some fresh perspectives to our Rewind podcast, where we're going to be taking a look at our earlier episodes and really trying to shine a light on how our department has been helping our staff navigate through the self-monitoring process.
In this Rewind episode, our colleagues Colleen Paplow and Dina Cook were joined by Granvel Johnson from our Office of Equity Affairs. And today we're going to discuss some of the key highlights and takeaways from that initial episode.
Yeah, so diving into Granvel's episode, one of the first themes that I really wanted to highlight relates to the overall purpose of the self-monitoring process. So towards the beginning of the episode, Granvel talked about how he was first introduced to the process. He talked about how he came to understand its purpose and how he came to understand the importance of self-monitoring.
My very first day on the job, I get an email from Kathy Moore, the superintendent. And it was talking about the need for self-monitoring. And I'm thinking to myself, what in the world have I gotten myself into? This is the first day on the job. So I went over to my supervisor, Therese, and she explained that the monitoring process is a part of the school district's initiative to make sure that we've got accurate data and that we're actually supporting our students.
So as people who love data, who are coming from, a point of working with research and data every day, seeing that he got this email on the first day is like music to our ears, right? We love hearing that as soon as he gets here, he's immediately jumping into that process. We're showing him immediately, hey, data is important. We're here to show you how important it is to monitor your efforts. But we can see how that could be very overwhelming to someone who...
Yes, and an email from the superintendent. That's
right?
Kind of a big deal.
I mean, it's not like you're getting it, from... just your boss, your supervisor alone, getting an email from your boss on your first day is probably overwhelming. But from the superintendent, yeah, that can definitely be very overwhelming. But ultimately, we're here to make sure that Granvel's hard work and other employees' hard work from program staff is paying off. We want to make sure we can say confidently that the work that he's doing in his program is effectively working, and we are here ultimately to support him in his efforts. We know that implementing a program within our district, of course, takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of resources, takes a lot of employees' time, and we want to value that time and those resources. And so we are here at DRA to make sure that those steps are rooted in quality data in order to maximize our efforts and meet everybody's shared goal of supporting our students. So that's where that accurate data piece comes in, where we want to make sure that we're tracking our inputs. So that means tracking that data on why a program is needed and also tracking our outputs. So making sure that the data is there to show how the program is ultimately supporting students and staff. So after Granvel talked about what his supervisor told him about self-monitoring and that sort of overwhelming email he first got from the superintendent, Granvel then talked about his honest thoughts and reactions he had before starting the self-monitoring process.
My initial thought was that this was going to be a tedious and time-consuming process. I'm going to create a report that somebody's going to read who doesn't know me, doesn't know the kids, doesn't know the process, just sort of an admin function. And so I was really, really, really not happy. But then I was introduced to you at the orientation, and I got to really understand that you and the Office of Data Accountability are really here to support us. And I could begin to see how this whole monitoring process would actually benefit me and the entire program. I mean, it benefited me primarily by giving me a snapshot of my entire program, my long-term goals, my short-term goals. I could see everything in one spot.
So overall, I really appreciate Granvel's honesty and humility in that quote. I think that sentiment's probably shared by a lot of folks in the district. I'm sure he's not the only one to experience that. So I really appreciate that he was able to share and be honest with us in that way. And I definitely think he's not alone in also thinking that it's just sort of an admin expectation that, you have this checklist and self-monitoring is part of that and you check it off a box and that's kind of it. So I really appreciated that he talked about how he thought that before and then he realized over time that those were just misconceptions that he had and that ultimately we are here to support him and make his job easier.
Yeah, we definitely don't want it, or, we don't want program staff staff to think of this as something that's in the way or it's just an
Right.
extra to do.
Right.
It's something that's useful and it should be built in naturally within
Exactly.
the work they're already doing.
We don't want it to be just busy work to make their lives harder. It's actually the opposite. We want to make their lives easier. We want to provide support and provide those resources for the work that they already do on their, every day-to-day work experience. And so ultimately program staff are going to be the experts in their respective programs, right? We're not the experts in their program. We don't go into it thinking that we are the experts. We want them to tell us about our program, and then we become the experts in the data and showing them how to go throughout those steps. But we definitely want to value the work that they do every day and honor them as the experts of their programs.
Another thing we noticed highlighted in the first episode with Granvel was the variety of data sources that he was using to support and monitor his program. One of the hosts, Colleen, discussed how she liked that he was acknowledging that variety of data that he was using to monitor his program, things like surveys and anecdotal data, just notes, anything that any data that he was collecting as part of his work with his mentors and mentees, and how he was using that data to plan and make improvements while his program was in motion.
I really like how you pointed out the different types of data that you're talking about, because I think sometimes when we hear data, and as Dina is asking, well, what data did you use? People would have jumped just immediately to the survey data. But thinking about all the times we collect data through, whether it's pulling those anecdotal data, and that can be used to inform those survey questions, right? You can gather data to strengthen the program initially in the early stages using a variety of data. And I think that's one of the things that the monitoring planning allows you to think through is, how do I gather that initial data and then use it for formative improvement?
So in this case, Granvel was starting simple with things like checklists, different anecdotal data from mentors and the children in his program. And these are, again, kind of our point earlier. These are things that he was already doing, already naturally a part of his rhythm with monitoring his program. And also adding little things, to improve the program throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, especially focusing on a survey, an anonymous survey that he sent out to the mentors of the program that was focusing on improving the experience for them in the following year as the mentors coming back. And as part of that, we came alongside of him, or Dina at this point, to make sure that his survey items were covering the breadth and depth of information that he anticipated and wanted to hear feedback from. So he was very thoughtful with things like the order of the questions he was asking, the answer choices he was providing, and setting up questions to really get the mentors thinking to solicit that feedback he wanted to help improve his efforts.
Yeah, and I liked how Colleen mentioned, most people when they think about data, they think about surveys or they think about numbers. And of course, that's a big component of collecting data. But also I like that she mentioned the anecdotal data as part of his data collection process, whether that's informal conversations he had with program staff or, if possibly conducting more formal interviews or focus groups with people. I think, that wide range of data that you can have can be really helpful in collecting all types of information that you can on your program.
Yes. And last point about the variety of data is who the data is from. So collecting data from all aspects of the program, all different stakeholders across the initiative.
Yes, so not just the people who are directly participating, but also people who are facilitating or people who are helping him lead the program, whatever that may be. All those different moving parts ultimately contribute to those goals that he has for his program.
Yes. And now another theme we found, so we're going backwards within that first episode. So we're rewinding within this rewind episode. Granvel discussed how the logic model, which he throughout the episode was referring to as the one-page document, but he's referring to as logic model, and how that was helpful for planning out the entire year for the program, especially with staying on track. So it's a logic model is a graphic organizer where you can see your program laid out, all the needs, the goals, the outcomes, the different strategies you're going to use. And it allows you to see the connections throughout your program. So seeing his program laid out in a logic model helped him identify different areas where he noticed he might need more data or different types of data to support a goal within the program. So getting back to that survey he developed, he noticed that he needed that to really assess how well different strategies were working towards his goals.
Yeah, and I like that he talked about on the episode too, how the logic model or roadmap, as he sometimes referred to it as, also helped him gain that trust with the program staff. So showing them that he has a plan for the program, that he has these short-term goals, long-term goals, seeing how his efforts are connecting to those goals. So not only does it help him plan, the program throughout the year, but also show that trust, build that relationship with the program staff to show that he is invested and that he cares about the success of the program.
Yes. And again, this is something that he was, I don't know if reluctance is the right word, but something he was a little cautious about.
Understandably.
Adapting right away. Yes.
Right. So let's go ahead and play that clip and hear from Granvel what he said about that.
So for me, a primary goal was to make sure that I was building trust with the mentors and putting pieces of the program in place so that they would begin to feel more supported.
The logic model was a tool that really allowed him to see the bigger picture of his program while also aiding him in narrowing down on what to focus on.
Yeah, I saw the logic model as both a roadmap and a travel kit. I mean, I already know pretty much what I wanted to do and how to do it, but I can be kind of creative at times, and sometimes I can sort of like go off script. And so the logic model really helped me sort of like stay on task. It allowed me to be very flexible with the entire plan.
So the logic model is really a living document, and you saw that with Granvel, where he was able to be flexible and add new components that allowed him to stay on track and keep his program running smoothly, but also allowed for him to build in different elements to support his program further. So overall, the logic model was something that he used to simplify what he was doing. It also allowed him to take a quick assessment of what was happening or what else needed to happen and what was or wasn't working to keep the program moving towards meeting its goals.
Yeah, and I like that he mentioned how he sort of is naturally, he tends to go off script. And I think people would assume, maybe a misconception, that with the logic model, with having this plan, that you can't go off script, that things are very set in stone. This is the plan. You're going to follow this plan very, in a structured manner. But really, it's meant to be flexible, right? It's meant to be, like you said, a living document to where it's meant to work for them and for their needs. And so if things change, things need to be modified. No problem with that at all.
Yeah, it's just meant to be this helpful planning tool just to help you organize your thinking as you keep your program moving forward.
Right.
So in our first Rewind episode, what is something that stood out to you?
I think overall what stood out to me is really being able to recognize the misconceptions staff are ultimately, inevitably going to have about the self-monitoring process. I think validating that experience is important in order to build trust with program staff for us. And then moving forward, making sure that program staff know that ultimately we're here for them, right? We're not here to be the experts in their program. We're not here to tell them how to run their programs. We're here to help them see and connect those dots between what they want out of their program, the purpose of their program, and how they can ultimately achieve those short-term and long-term goals. What about you?
For me, it's the data. I think I love data,
right,
just like you.
Of course.
So the variety of data sources that you collect in any project, but especially in these programs that are vast and wide serving. So just knowing that there are a lot of different things can count as your data. It doesn't have to be something summative or a very formal survey.
Right.
Just things that occur naturally within running your program.
Right.
So, and just seeing the flexibility that Granvel gave himself to collect and capture what all he was doing in his program.
Right.
And, that logic model as well, which we'll talk more about soon, but the logic model and just how that is the living document and
right.
how he saw it that way eventually within his efforts.
Yeah. And connecting two of those things that you just mentioned, I think also realizing that the data collection can happen at any point in the year within, the run of the program, right? It's not like data collection happens at one specific period and that's it, and that's all your data. It's whenever it happens naturally throughout the year can be counted as data, whether that's numbers from a survey and counts, how many people participated, or whether that's, conversations that you have with your program staff about how things are going or any areas for improvement.
Yes. And for further resources on that, see our show notes link down below. The self-monitoring resource playlist that provides all sorts of different examples of things that you might find useful when monitoring your efforts, as well as a brief video on the why behind self-monitoring. Then, of course, a link to the full conversation between Colleen, Dina, and Granville. You'll also find that in the show notes.
Yep. And so coming up on our next episode, for our next Rewind, we are going to recap and discuss some of the highlights from an interview that happened between Sherry Miller, who was the former principal of Lacey Elementary at the time of the interview, and Colleen Paplow and Andy Jackal from DRA. And they talked about specifically going into more depth of the logic model as an organizing technique where you can, again, display those connections between the strategies of your program and how you can ultimately attain the goals.
And thank you to our first guest and host from the episode we highlighted in this Rewind episode, Granvel Johnson from the Office of Equity Affairs, Colleen Paplow and Dina Cook from DRA's Program Accountability Department. And thank you to our producer, Daniel Bunce, and our co-host, Brittany.
Thank you, everyone, for listening with us today. We hope that you will stick around and stay tuned for the Rewind season.